Hi, everybody. I've got something I want to share with all of you today. Of course, I gotta adjust this around just a tiny bit. I got something I want to share with you all today, and I'm kind of excited about it. And let's just say it's worth a share. Uh, well, just so you know, my book, Mammoth Cave Wood Family Story, is out now, and I've included in the description of this video links to both Barnes & Noble and Amazon where you can purchase yourself a copy of this book. Excuse me. And if you're wanting to get it on Nook or Kindle, check on Amazon and Barnes & Noble between now, which is January 28th, 2023, and I'd say St. Patrick's Day, March 17th of this year. And it should definitely by then be on Kindle and Nook to where you can get an e-copy of this if you don't want to get a physical copy. But I do greatly appreciate it if you ran and bought a copy of the book, because you're actually helping me out and you're helping Tony out. And I worked really hard on this book. I worked on this book for 3 years. It's completely biographical. It's 100% true to my knowledge, and it's worth reading. It's worth buying. It's like I wrote it. There's actually, and I've been thinking about it. Unlike Prince Harry, who talks about his you-know-what being frozen, in this book I actually talk about people who actually made a difference and actually contributed to society. Like Stephen Bishop, my dad, Floyd Collins, even though his contribution was him being like Prince Harry and not exactly the brightest bulb on the marquee of life. But and seeing that February is Black History Month here in the United States, I talk about Black History Month in this book, and Stephen Bishop, because let's face it, Stephen Bishop was a slave that lived pre-American Civil War days, so like the early 1800s. He actually is credited with a lot of stuff with the cave, the first actual drawn map of what the cave system was known at the time that he was alive in the 1800s. And, it's like I talk about, the cave's contribution to medical science. It's the first tuberculosis colony in the world. And this was, of course, in the 1800s before they came up with streptomycin. I think I said that right. Or the cure for tuberculosis. And, this is pre-Waverly Hills in Louisville. So it's like a good 50, 60 years prior to Waverly Hills in Louisville, Kentucky. In fact, Mammoth Cave actually is the first tuberculosis hospital in the whole world, period. It's followed by some place over in Germany that was above ground. And of course, granted, I tell what happens in the book with the, tuberculosis hospital. I have to buy the book to find out. But anyway, I just wanted to let you all know that, this book is definitely out now. It's basically $20. It's $19.95. I just rounded up to say 20. That's what my parents always did. Would round it up to an even dollar amount. It's about $20 US dollars, 20 US dollars a book. I would recommend this book for book clubs or anybody interested in learning about Black history, in the cave and cave tours, if you've never been. I have I have a whole cornucopia of different things in here of interest to talk about. If you want to learn about what a sinkhole could do to a car, I have that in here. I have that in this book. You can actually read about what happened to the Corvette Museum when a sinkhole opened up under it. I have pictures. You know, I mean, like, look, it's Tony's smiling face. You know, I mean, it's his pretty face. As a matter of fact, this picture here where my right pointer finger is, this picture of him right here, that picture was taken in absolute darkness inside the cave. We were on the Grand Avenue tour, and it was his very first time in the cave back in 2004. And I told Tony, beforehand, I prepped him for this. I told him, I said, now listen, honey, what's going to happen at some point during the cave tour, they're going to either sit everybody down or stop everybody and, tell everybody to stay put. And what they're going to do is they're going to turn off all the lights. And it's going to be darker than dark. I mean, you're going to find out what a blind person sees. It'll be like you can't see your own hand in front of your own face. It's going to be dark. Darker than the darkest room you've ever been in. It's going to be dark. And we're not fooling. I'm like, it's no fooling. The look on his face. I mean, I got it on film. This was back, when I still had a 35mm camera. And I got to tell you, that picture I just showed you, I took with 800 speed film. And he had this look on his face of wow. She was not pulling my leg. She was being literal. I mean, it is literally darker than the darkest room you've ever been in. The electric goes out in that cave, you are in some deep duty. I mean, it is dark, 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 dark. No joke. I mean, it's... Fortunately, knock on wood, I've never been in the cave and the electric's gone out. I've been lucky. I've gotten very lucky on that. And I've been going in that cave since I was 7. So, I've been very fortunate. Last 4 decades, that is telling my age. I've been doing this for 40 years. I think I know what I'm talking about at this point. It's like the inside of the cave, they turn that light off, you are thinking, holy shoot, fire and damnation. It is dark in here, baby. It is one dark cave. I tell you what, this is something else. With the cave, and I know I think in my Mammoth Cave thing that I made up in 2000 it was either 2006 or 8 or something. It was after I married Tony. It's on here on my YouTube channel. We talk about the fact that a skunk, when we went down there, we hadn't been married all that long. It was probably 2012, 2010, 2012, something like that, approximately at the latest. We went down there and went through the cave, okay? It was June. And, here in Kentucky in June, depending on which part of June you're talking about, it can either right after Memorial Day in May get hotter than the hinges of hell, or it can wait until the middle of June and end up being hot and humid here in Kentucky. Doesn't matter what part of Kentucky you're in, it gets hot, it gets humid, and you're thinking, God, what did I do to deserve this? I mean, it was, warm. It was that warm at that point. But we went down in the cave, okay? And we get down to the historical entrance. And I have a picture of the historical entrance in the book. And it's the guide opens the door up. And we go filing in, what have you. Well, what happens is we get in there and we went, oh my God, help all of us. We're whoo! I mean, it's just, a skunk had bought it right by the door. Just inside the cave beyond that steel metal door. And it's when the guide stopped us at the leaching tanks and the rotunda, he's like, do y'all have any questions? I'm like, yeah, I have one. what was that by the door that stunk? I'm like, good Lord. I'm like, oh my God, help all of us. That stunk, man. And he said, back in February of that year, a skunk, for heaven only knows what reason, crawled in the cave and died. Right there by the door. And, this is like, what, 5 months later, you could still smell it. I mean, it smelled like it had just bought it, like, the week before, like not very long prior, but it was still potent. I'm like, whoa, Lord. I was like, stinky. Yeah, that was a historical tour that we went on that one. And it's like you go out the same door. But anyway, I did want to say this, and I've been thinking about it. I mean, it's like, rather than buy Prince Harry's book, Despair, where he's whining, from what I'm told, he whines about his you-know-what. Actually get a book that actually talks about people that really did something constructive, instead of whining about their whatnot. Buy my book. I don't badmouth anybody that lives in England that you have to call Your Highness or Sir, Ma'am, any of those big wig pickers over there. I don't talk about them. The only person from England that I talk about in this book, you know what? His name was Charles Dickens. That's the only person from England that I talk about in my book. So, if you want to hear what I have to say about Charles Dickens and the cave, you need to buy the book to find out. There's somebody else there's a couple other famous fellas actually 3 famous fellas I talk about. Mark Twain, because he had a thing for caves and mummies, and H.P. Lovecraft, because he wrote a story called Beast in the Cave. And I talk about all that in this book. Mammoth Cave, One Family Story, seriously, if you can, the links, like I mentioned before, are in the description for this video. Please do me a solid and go, pay for this book, or buy this book, do a book club, because, trust me, you're going to be glad you did. It's worth what you pay for this book, because I worked my butt off on it, and find it, it's like, if you want to see, it's, the Corvette Museum, with like the cars for, that fell in the sinkhole. As a matter of fact, it is really, really worth a look. And then, I talk about this is Floyd Collins. It's like I have pictures about him. And, like hiking and all the other interesting stuff. There's a whole lot of interesting pictures and, anecdotes. There's even a story about, cheese in the book. So if you want to read a cheesy story, buy the book. It's Mammoth Cave, One Family Story. It's worth a read, So, help a girl out here, all right? Well, thanks for listening to me blab on about my book, and y'all have a good evening. Bye.